Hey everyone, this is Diana Depaul, NBA referee scout and former D1 women's official. Thank you for listening to the Crown Refs podcast. Serve the game.
You are listening to the Crown Refs podcast, the audio experience for basketball officials. Serve the game.
It's so nice and it just gets me like kind of jazzed up when I go to these different gyms and I just get to watch so many referees that have such an enthusiasm and passion, just to be out there doing what they're doing, and then doubly to have that desire to be the best they can be, whatever that means to them. It just it's really joyful to be sitting up there watching.
That's great. I know there's a lot of passionate young officials, and the industry's getting younger and hungrier, it seems, over these last decade. So I'm sure you're right in the mix with that.
They are, and I'm sure as we talk tonight, there's different things we'll hit on, and it is awesome. I go into different levels, as of watching all kinds of referees, even go to some like college programs and just try to build some enthusiasm, for officials even as young as that to continue with officiating coming out of college. And to just be out there and again seeing their enthusiasm, it just gets you going, but on the same note with that, you were right. You're right when you say that there's a lot of young officials that really, really want to be doing this, and part of that is helping them understand that there is a process to all of this. There's a process to getting started in high school. There's a process to getting started in college. None of this is going to happen overnight. It takes a lot of patience. And sometimes when they're really young and they get to taste a little success early on, that can kind of be a hard lesson sometimes for them to, really understand. And that it's not failure. It's just that they need more game experience. They need to see more because they haven't even begun to kind of, see the tip of the iceberg in terms of everything that's out there to learn about officiating.
Yeah, that's something that I think every passionate official goes through once they get that bug, whether it's a year in or 2 to 3 years in. But once you really get that officiating bug, you want to move so quickly. You want to move overnight. You want to, jump levels. You think you have all the experience in the world. It's you don't have that perspective yet of the experience, knowing that there's so many more reps you need to get. But I think it's a feeling a lot of officials share in common.
It is. And the thing that we all have to do, a good job at is as their mentors, keeping them, keeping their mind where it needs to be, keeping them still focused on what is right in front of them. Go out and do that game. Go out and do that next season if they didn't get picked up, where they thought they should have been that year, something like that, to just, handle what's in front of them. You can only control so much in this business. And, maybe there's going to be a game out there that season that all of a sudden when you're driving home to yourself, you're going to say, wow, I really never saw plays like this. I never really saw speed like this. I just never saw, the kind of post play I had tonight. I learned a lot. And then it begins to sink in, I'm going to get there. But so, maybe my mentors are right. I do need to just learn a little bit more. But it's hard. It's hard because they compare themselves to friends. They compare themselves, too quickly to people that might be 1 or 2 or 3 years ahead of them. And they think, I should be there too. And so it's all just a journey. But the whole thing is just keeping them focused on control what is in front of you, control what you can, because you just can't control everything.
What would you say is the best area in the country right now for up and coming officials?
I don't really think that there's one. There's 4 scouts, for example, that we watch games all over the country, some internationally, and that it would really be hard for me to put my finger on that, because our job is to just to find those little diamonds in the rough, and
Right.
and we're finding them, and we're finding them pretty much everywhere. And we're looking to unturned stones that historically have maybe never been thought to look at before. So I honestly think that you can be anywhere, and if you want a shot at collegiate or art, like the NBA officiating, you do the right things and you will be found.
For most, the craft of officiating is a great part-time gig. It can be a wonderful second piece to an individual's career, and for some, it can indeed be a full-time vocation. Diana, you are in the small percentage of people that get to live this ref life full-time. You've had a long, successful career as an official, and now you get to give back to the game off the court. Can you touch on how you got into the field and your relationship with officiating?
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Paul. I have a kind of a little funny story as to actually how I got started in this. I played basketball at University of Richmond, and I had friends even during that time that kept telling me, you should consider officiating part-time, so I graduate, and I really didn't pick it up for a few years, but I did start playing on a co-ed basketball team. And at the time, my then boyfriend was our kind of player coach, and I was ruthless. This is a rec league, Montgomery County, Maryland, co-ed basketball team, and I was so mean to the officials. I would get technical fouls. I was getting thrown out of games.
Talk about it.
Oh my gosh, it was so, not funny, but so fast forward to our championship game that year, and I had one technical foul called against me. So of course I have to go to the bench. And again, my then boyfriend, player coach, he was livid because you had to have a female on the court at all times. Mm-hmm. And at 6'1", I was the female my team always wanted on the court. So, Tony came down the bench, and he's kind of yelling at me, and then he finally just kind of says, "You know what? If you think you can do better than these officials, this is a rec league. Why don't you go try it?" So to this day, 28 years later,
that's great.
Is that on the bench? I was like, you know what? I will. And sure enough, the moment I started in Board 12, AABO, I fell in love with it. Absolutely fell in love with it. And so I just worked. I worked, and I did it. I did that same rec league mm-hmm. that I was getting thrown out of. Worked that, worked JV, high school, worked varsity, high school. I joined a couple of other associations in Maryland because honestly, I just wanted to work games. And at some point, going to some of the camps I was going to, the IABO camps, I learned that, you could, if you really put the time and effort into it, Maryland was a good spot for JUCO. Maryland was a good spot for Division III, those kind of things. I knew that I wanted a shot at college. So, I just kind of did. I went to the JUCO college route. I worked a lot there for a few years, then went to D3, and then to me, I thought I had made it when Mr. Birch picked me up in the CIAA. That was a Division II. And I love that league and love that man. Unfortunately, he has passed away, but he gave a lot of us our start. He gave a lot of people that were working Division One their start, and the CIAA was not an easy league to work. So you really cut your teeth in seeing a lot of stuff in a game. So yeah, I went worked that for a few years, and then I did try out for some Division Ones, and by the grace of God, did get picked up in several Division Ones. At the same time, we had started raising a family. So, I tell everybody, I absolutely had the best of both worlds because I got to be a mom and a wife, and then I just found something in life that I truly loved, and that was officiating. And, because of the tremendous support I got at home, I was able to somehow make a good run in officiating work. I did go out and got certified in FIBA. So I was able to work some tournaments in FIBA. I represented the United States at the World University Games in Bangkok, Thailand. That was truly a meaningful event for me. It meant so much to me to get to represent the United States like that. And I learned a lot about communication, because when you're in a situation like that, you're just dropped into a situation where you're with people that, you can't communicate in their language. They can't communicate in yours. So you actually really learn a lot on the court about how important, body language is, how important eye contact is, what you're doing with your eyes, where you're looking, how to read where your partner's looking. I actually learned a lot in officiating through that experience. Loved every minute of it. And then I, did work then it was called the D League, and Joe Borgia was in charge of it, and, worked that for a little bit. But I had a long run at Division One and loved every minute of it. Can't even say enough about the people that I met, the experiences I had, and all of that somehow just, enabled me to have the courage to, apply for this position. And again, by the grace of God, I was beyond fortunate to be in the position I am now. And it's a dream come true, really, for me. So, it's been a good run. It's been a great run.
I'd say so. You spent 27 years as a women's college basketball official. Most of those years were on the Division One level. As you said, you're working for the NBA. So once you retired from college, tell me about how the opportunity to work in the NBA came, and how's your tenure been with the world's greatest basketball league?
I'm the newest member of the scouting group. It's not been a long tenure yet. I'm hoping that continues. But I was another scout just kind of let me know that, maybe they were going to be looking, but that basically I had to go online and just keep checking on the NBA website about, potential openings. And I sent my resume in, and I heard from Human Resources, and then there was a series of about 6 or 7 phone interviews, and went through each phone interview, and then, got a call from, the NBA that I was the candidate. So needless to say, that was quite just a really happy day for me. And I just took off running with it. And my tenure has been, unbelievable. To sit in rooms and get to hear people like Monty McCutcheon and Mark Wunderlich and Bennett Salvador and Joey Crawford, to hear them talk about officiating. And I've listened to Joey's podcast, on Crown Refs. I've listened to Scott's too, listened to Al's too.
Thank you.
Anyway, I have my notebooks in front of me right now of all the notes that I take from them still. And, I joke with Sue Blau a little bit because after I listen to Monty talk a lot of times and people like that, I'm taking all these notes and it's almost like I want to get up and go, yeah, coach, put me in. I'm ready for the game. And then I have to remind myself, oh, wait, I'm not the official anymore. But it's just unbelievable how the knowledge base and, the level of basketball IQ and, how they see the game. And you just want to soak it in. It's just tremendous. And, so what they provide is unbelievable. And, I love being around that kind of motivation. And they're just so, they want to get the best out of everybody. And they work hard to do that. They work incredibly hard to do that. So it motivates you to do your job in the best way possible. And that for me, that's, for me to just be the best scout I can be, to try to find, the best candidates I can. And then for me to try to get them, as ready as possible and as enthusiastic as possible about the opportunity that they might get presented with. Because, to me, to be offered that kind of opportunity and to, if you're the kind of person that'll run through that door, just run through it and do everything you can to make it happen, it's going to change your life. So, maybe the mom in me too, a little bit, just sits back and says, this is pretty cool. Like, this means so much to me about this job that potentially I could, impact somebody and change their life for the better. And I really believe that about, number one, being an official, and then number two, potentially making it at the most elite and best level in the world, and that is to be an NBA official.
Sounds like even though you've retired from officiating, you're getting a lot of fulfillment out of this opportunity right now.
Oh, I am, because it's tremendously fulfilling on so many levels. And, in the latter part of my officiating career, I wasn't out there doing the Duke Carolina games. But for me, and I can only speak for me, I took so much pride when I would have one of my supervisors, call me to say, hey, I'm going to kind of fill your November and December schedule up. I'm going to put you with, one and many times two brand new officials. They've never worked a Division I game before, but, we know you'll do the right thing with them out there. They just need to they need to break into it. They need to, just make that first whistle. And I took a lot of pride in the fact that, and fulfillment in the fact that people saw in me a real desire to give back and really try to make the best crew that night, that it meant something to me to be able to say, wow, I just saw this official kind of grow up in front of my eyes. And sometimes that was from one half to the other. So what I do now, I almost see it in the same way. When I maybe see something in an official that I'm looking at it, at a camp or a tournament, to me, it's somewhat of the same fulfillment in that when I see them in the summer and then maybe go back and see them that winter, maybe see them again the next summer even, and then it's unbelievable. I just sit up in the stands and it's almost like that proud mama moment where, even if they don't make our process, I just want to, leave them with that feeling that, look, you can do this. Every level needs good officials. And I just, there is a little bit of pride in me that, I'm watching them just starting to believe in what they're doing out there, and that inner confidence is growing, not arrogance, but this inner confidence is growing, and they're really starting to open up to, what they're hearing and what they're being told, and trying new things and not being afraid of failing out there. There's a beauty and a fulfillment I feel when I can just sit up there every once in a while and almost go like that, yes, and whatever. And it could be just a small, let's say communication was something that they needed to work on. Just when they did try to go over and talk to a coach, in a different way, or maybe they really had never talked to a coach before, and that was something they were going to work on that year. It just, there's a lot of fulfillment in it for, still for me. And yeah, a lot of it is from that officiating family type of feel.
Yeah, you work with so many amazing former officials that are now in leadership roles. What's been your experience working so closely with Monty McCutcheon, and what are some of the things you've learned and your main takeaways?
It's so inspirational. He is, he really is an inspirational leader. I should back up and say team leader. Monty, I think, and I'm trying to learn it more. I mean, he really has a unique ability to make others around him really want to do and be the best that they can. He has a way of speaking that is incredible. It's absolutely incredible. He is so knowledgeable, and he delivers those words in a way that, anyone sitting in the room, whether you're a new official or a very experienced official, can walk away with maybe a new understanding or a new way of thinking about something. And you are motivated to want to just go out and try to implement those things. His communication style, I never knew him as an official, and I'm like I said, I've only been doing this 2 years, so I'm still very new to all of this too. But I can see why he was known as such a great communicator on the court, because he has a way of being extremely approachable, but yet because of the knowledge base, when there needs to be a firmness and just a decision made, there's no question he has all of that ability to do it.
And I think there's a really beautiful balance to being super approachable, but then, like you said, having that firmness.
That's one of the things that, I task myself to look for in our candidates. We have it, we term it the NBA brand of officiating. Firmness is one of those things you have to be able to understand and show on the court. It doesn't mean being arrogant, absolutely not. But it does mean when you walk on that court, you are willing to own the game that night. You're willing to put yourself out there to say it is your job to serve the game, number one. It is your job to keep the integrity of that game the utmost priority. And yes, all of that has to be done with complete respect and any communication we have. But throughout the game, you have to show fairness. You have to show a firmness on the court, because through that firmness and how we're going to be consistent that night, all of that, the fairness comes out. Everybody's going to walk away feeling like they had a fair game. You have to have that courage to be firm.
I love that you said courage, and you talked about the NBA's brand of officiating. What do you think, in your opinion, are some other character traits of not only an NBA official, but just a great official?
Willingness to work hard. This goes back to what we talked about in the beginning. Sometimes, you can have like some of the attributes. You can have this great look. You can have, the best speed in the world. But you have to be willing to work hard. You have to be willing to day in and day out say, I have, such and such amount of time. I'm going to go back and by myself look at these game tapes. Look at this. Look at that. I'm going to go back and get in the rule book more. I quote Al Batista all the time. He literally looks in a rule book every single day, as I know you know, Paul.
Four of them, four different rule books.
Yeah, he looks in the rule books every single day. How many aspiring officials do that?
Crickets.
It's you have to have that, like, just that drive. You have to have that drive. You have to have that willingness. You have to have, a humility about you, but at the same time, a confidence on the court. The humility comes in when you are being given, let's say, some constructive criticism by a veteran. How do you handle that? Listen to it, take it to heart, go back and study what they're teaching you. On the court, it can be shown by how you communicate with the coach from time to time, by how you're sometimes communicating with your partners. Your effort, again, your effort day in and day out. It doesn't just start when you walk on the court. For the NBA, I mean, that effort has to be there all the time. Game preparation. What do you do on game day? What do you do off season? What do you do heading into the season? It shows. It shows. I can tell when I'm up in the stands just watching how the officials walk on the court, how they prepared for that game. For us, I'll use the word elite. You have to get into elite, good habits for all of these things. Game awareness and control. The game awareness, what are your eyes doing in terms of trying to check on the clocks? I mean, the game awareness is 1,000 different things. I'm just throwing a couple out like that. Mm-hmm. But are you recognizing changes in the intensity during the game? If that intensity changes, are you responding accordingly to it? And again, that can go into 1,000 different directions. So I'll just kind of keep that general right there. But, all of it, clocks especially. Are you quick to know time differentials? Again, Al Batista has some wonderful training habits with that. If you go back and listen to his podcast on Crown Refs, you can learn them too.
Thank you for the podcast promotion.
You are quite welcome. But we talked about the firmness. Really, it's an understanding that our job really is to serve the game first and foremost. And that's not just play calling. It is making sure you are mentally and physically prepared for every single game. And then during the game, that again means many, many different things. But it's always, without question, game first crew and then yourself. There's nothing in the NBA brand of officiating that brings in arrogance. Confidence, yes. Arrogance, no.
It's a very fine line between the two.
It is. But arrogance, I think, and again, I'm speaking, for for things that I look at right now. I mean, even when I officiated, I think arrogance really does kind of portray itself. Arrogance to me is, on the court when you're working with a partner who, let's say you're out there with a less experienced official, never looks to involve them in any kind of crew dynamics, is very quick to call out, your mistakes and why, some plays weren't handled properly. Oh, but by the way, they were blocked out, so they are not part of it type of thing. Arrogance is very quick, I think, to, just present itself in 1,000 different ways in discussions after the games about, hey, did you hear who got, these assignments? And, it's never about, but they really deserved it this year. They've had a good year. They worked hard. It's always, some other agenda as to why somebody else got a game, that they were the better one kind of attitude. There's just no place for it. It doesn't make anything about the officiating world better. For me, I had a lot of learning to do. I was never the best at this or anything like that by far, but I tried to go into each game understanding that we were only going to be as good as the weakest link that night, so to speak. So I felt like in any position I was in, whether I had U2, U1, or R next to my name, it was my job to treat the game that night and do what I could to help us be the best crew we could be that night. And to me, that's confidence. That's not arrogance.
What are some of the things about officiating that you're passionate about? Since you have the platform of being a teacher and a coach of the craft, what kind of change and impact are you trying to bring about? My goal is to help get the conversation past, wow, I was watching a game last night and there was a really good female official on it. In some small way or some way, I would love to help that conversation continue to become, hey, wow, did you see such and such game last night? Y'all had 3 great officials working it. And then let me be the one to maybe go back and check our schedule if I was on the road traveling and couldn't see the game or, just didn't know who was on it. Let me be the one to go back and go, wow, we had 2 females and a male in that game. In other words, I want to be part of the bigger conversation that it's about officials. It's not about, she's a great female official or he's a great male official for that part. We live in a very diversified world now, and we want to be as diversified as possible. So in a nutshell, it really is about bringing to our grassroots tryouts the best officials I can find.
Just going to take a quick 30-second timeout from the podcast to bring you a word from our sponsor, Mr. Mike Ori from Neat Tucks. Thanks, Mike.
The Crown Refs Podcast is brought to you by Neat Tucks, the best way to keep your shirt or uniform tucked. We as basketball officials have enough to think about during the game. If you're looking for that clean, professional-looking uniform shirt, that NBA, WNBA, Olympic, D1 look, go to neattux.com and order yours today. Neat Tux and Crown Refs, serving the game.
Continue to work hard. Continue to again, I go back to that, control what you can control. And that is, are you working as hard as possible? Are you staying as organized as possible going into every season? Are you as prepared as possible for your games? Don't be afraid of failure. Don't be afraid to go out and try things you've been told by some of the mentors that you may trust. Go out and try what you're being told. Put yourself in uncomfortable situations, because the only way to become more comfortable is to get into some uncomfortable situations sometimes on the court. Don't always ask for the easy games. If you're working some levels where you know the supervisors very well and you're comfortable, ask for the really hard games, so that you're putting yourself in a position where you have to deal with potentially anything happening in games. So as you start to move up, you're going to be less surprised at things happening on the court. You're going to be more ready for opportunity, in other words. And if you're given an opportunity, take it and run with it. If it's the path you want. And that's one of my other big things in this officiating business. You have to define your path for yourself. You can't let other people tell you what your path necessarily should be. Find 1, 2, 3 people you really trust. Early on, I get it. They're there to really help guide you and start that path. And that's absolutely something we all need. But at some point, you have to find the belief and the courage in yourself to say, I'm going to go for this, or this is what I want. And you make your path happen. Don't let obstacles get in your way, because you're the one at the end of the day that has to put your head on the pillow that night. And you have to be okay with your decisions in officiating. And the worst thing I would want for anybody is eventually have that, I probably should have tried this. I probably should have gone for this. So early on, just know that there's 1,000 different ways the officiating world can go, but anymore, it is very diversified. So, and there's new avenues opening up every day. And don't be afraid of any of them. Go for it. But it has to be your path, and you really have to buy into that. So there's some of the things that I would just talk to them about.
We're always talking about ways to improve on the court. That's why I'm glad in this clip, Diana touches on some of the off-the-court skills that we must execute as officials, such as organization, time management, travel, scheduling, availability, and most importantly, doing whatever you can to make the assigner's job easier.
If you're going to be in several D1 conferences, no matter, again, whether they be mid-level, whether they be, the big ones or whatnot, you have to really time management, organization, communication, all of those become key. You have to learn to, get so organized, because you might be on 6 different websites that you're responsible for putting close dates on, for example, or this or that. And it happened to me. Inevitably, the one website that, maybe I was a day late, getting a few close dates in on that I just got the day before, the morning before. It's the one night that other supervisor would call and say, hey, I see you're open on such and such a date. And the conversation you don't want is, well, I just got more dates this morning, and well, it's just, you learn so much, almost business wise, about how well organized you have to be. And one little, I was taught this, by some of my mentors and all of that. But early on, I learned these days it could be Google Docs, it could be any number of apps out there. But, do an Excel spreadsheet. I still see some officials that might have 16 different pieces of paper because they've got one schedule coming in like this, another schedule coming in like this. You need to do something to compile all of those schedules, all of that information together, and keep it, I'm sure many people say this, but, keep a copy of that in your car. And I'm talking about the old fashioned printed copies, because again, especially at the D1 level, if a supervisor is calling you, they might be calling you from an airport where they don't have access to anything online, and they may have just had a cancellation, and your name appears on a list as being open that day for a 7 p.m. game. So if you're somewhere that you don't have the electronic access, have a piece of paper where if they call you, you can say, yep, I'm still open and I can get out the door right now and get to that site. That will help you build credibility with those supervisors, because then they know you're trustworthy. That what you're showing, and you're also very diligent in keeping all of that kind of information up to date. I mean, they might have, over 100 assignments that night that they have to worry about. So, do whatever you can to make their job easier in terms of how you're keeping yourself organized and all of that. And then just from like a travel aspect, just learned a lot about staying patient, being adaptable, and how important backup plans were. So at the D1 level, sometimes you don't have the luxury of, always calling the day before, just anticipating a weather storm. It's almost like, you have to do what you can do to get to a game. They might not have people in that area necessarily easily accessible to cover that site. Now, they never want you to do anything, that might harm yourself. But, if you have a day off before a game and they're calling for a blizzard somewhere, we do, you get paid money. Consider going then, early. So when that supervisor might call, panic that, can you get to this site? What a relief to them that maybe you can say, I'm already here. That happens several times, but sometimes we can kind of get so foolish, and I'm not going to spend, whatever, $100 on a hotel room. You end up missing the game. And because you maybe didn't do something a little extra to get to the game site, yet your partners did, now that supervisor, it just helped me. These are little things that, again, I was taught, I did. And I think, for the most part, it really helped me at least continue in my D1 career. None of that was really on the court stuff. It was just if I was going to take a game assignment, I was going to take it serious and really business-like, manage it the best I could. The funniest story, though, I mean, this is one little story. It's not a D1 story, but it's actually a FIBA story. I'm 6'1", and I will tell you publicly, I wear a size 12. I'm a size 12.
Me too.
Okay. So here I am in FIBA in Bangkok, Thailand. again, let me stress, I'm a 6'1" female. There's not a lot of 6'1" females in Bangkok, Thailand. So I was fortunate enough to make it through the pool round and was selected to stay into the medal round. So we had, I think, 2 days off between those two rounds. And for some reason, if I remember right, we had to watch the number of bags the amount of luggage we were bringing with us or something like that. They had sent us like a FIBA bag, and they asked you to try to keep whatever you brought to that bag. It's a pretty nice size bag. But for some reason, I either forgot or I didn't bring sneakers, thinking, well, I have my referee shoes, but I'm doing games every day too, and I'll just wear them to do my quick workouts. So I did a workout one of those 2 days. And then I find out that morning that I'm working that later that day, get everything together, get in the van. My game site is about 2.5 hours away from the hotel. And Bangkok, Thailand traffic, it's not an easy, let's just make a U-turn and we can still make the game, with time to spare type of situation. So we've been in the van about 2 hours, and we still have a good drive. And I will never forget all of a sudden going, holy crap. For some reason, I just went like, my sneakers are still sitting on my hotel bed.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I have never done this in my life. I'm in Bangkok, Thailand. So we get to the game site, and I've been to the game site before, and the people working the table, we had a good time. We had a good relationship from earlier games, and they thought, they got a kick out of me sometimes trying to communicate some things from the court and whatnot. So anyway, one of the men there wore like a size 9. And he happened to have somewhat of a black shoe. So for the first half, I had to wear, I'm a size 12. I somehow got my feet into
you made it
size
work.
9.
You made it work.
And made it work. Meanwhile, Ron Tyberski was the men's representative for the United States. And he was over there, and that day was his day off. And I will owe him forever, because I called him, and he was able to get the hotel to let him in my room. He got my sneakers, and he made a round trip of probably 6 hours just to bring me my sneakers. So at least second half I had them. But let me tell you something, to have that as the time to forget part of your referee uniform, something I will never forget.
Thanks, Turbo.
Yeah, he's a good guy. He's a really good guy.
That's funny. Oh,
Yep.
Man, that's like every official's worst nightmare. There's times where I'm on my way to a game, and I'll pull over just to double check that I have my bag in the trunk.
Yeah, I did it many times. I even carried 2 bags at sometimes, some years or whatever. That's why it's just me. When I go big, Mm-hmm. But hey, this is what officiating's about. At the same time, lifelong friend now in Ron, and that's really what, mainly the Division I is. I have friends that'll be lifelong friends from it. That's a huge part of it. And in the presentations I do talk about the referee family. I welcome all of them that are thinking about doing it into like quote unquote my referee family, because that's the way I see it. They're entering the best family in the world, and they'll everybody in this has lifelong friends from it.
Thanks for listening. Please go share this with a fellow official. Make sure you subscribe, and it would also mean the world to me if you left a review on Apple Podcast. Have a great day. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.